Hi there, it's Pete the Hipster King from the Hairy Game Lords, and this week Dave and I have been playing the two-player game Salt and Bones. Now, before we start, I haven't got a box because we haven't been playing this in real life. We've been playing virtually, obviously down to COVID and self-isolation. We're not able to play in person, and we've had a go on this on TTS. So, what did we think? Well, I really enjoyed Salt and Bones. It is a kind of piratey, or at least that kind of era, feel where you're battling. It's a duel, it's a two-player duel, 1v1. You're battling on a board that gradually over time starts to disintegrate, as though the way I see it is you're slashing your swords against each other and against the, different parts of the ship's hull start to break up, and so the area you can play on gradually shrinks. At the minute, that's just you draw a card at the start of the round and you place a little cube onto a square on the board that you can't use. Now, what I really liked about this game, obviously we didn't have the physical cards, but all of the cards that were on the mod on TTS, you could see the quality of the artwork. And I don't know what the Kickstarter will bring, but those cards with a nice linen back, they're a sort of deep red with look like deep red with sort of gold detail on, and creams and silvers. So they look really luxurious. That kind of it did make me feel like those old sort of the old films with pirates and that kind of era of that sort of sailing the seven seas, and you've got those kind of almost royal crest type feel to everything. Looked really good. You've got two basic types of cards. You've got attack cards and strategy cards. Attack cards have got two ends with so you have a cross swords with a number and you have a foot with a number. The cross swords is the attack value, and the foot at the bottom of the card is a bit like a domino, I guess, has got your opportunity value. You lay your cards onto the board. It's a grid-based board, but it's not just a square grid. There is some strategy in how the grid's been made up, so that you can you've got to think really carefully about where you do place your cards, because that opportunity number is really important. If I place an attack of 2 against an opportunity of foot 2, I'm going to deal 4 damage to my opponent. So you add the two things together to get the damage that you deal. So working out where you're going to place your cards to reduce the chance of your opponent getting too much opportunity is really, really important. So that's the attack cards. The other thing with the attack cards that we didn't play right on the first time but learnt about on the second is if you have got momentum, which is you're the kind of first player and you're in control, you're allowed to chain attacks together. So there are cards that have got a little chain link on them, and you can chain as many of those as you've got and build up a massive combo attack and do some real damage, because your aim is to get your opponent down from 20 to 0 over the course of a number of rounds. And if you get to 0 and if you get your opponent to 0 and you're not at 0, you win. If you're both at 0, you get a kind of second chance and you move back up to 1, and then it's a real battle of strategy to see if you can maintain your 1 while taking the point off the other person. So the strategy cards, 3 types. You've got a little board that you lay them on. You've got your instincts. They're hidden because nobody will know what your instincts are, and they're things where you might take a piece of damage but you're able to avoid it just at the last minute, or you take a big piece of damage and you're able to bat that straight back and give the same amount of damage back. So those instincts you can flip over at a certain point depending on what's being done to you or what you're doing. So you have equipment. Equipment's brilliant. It's like extra armor. Now that's open. Everybody can see that, so your opponent can see what equipment you've got. And similarly, some of those equipments are just one hit. So it might be that you've got an axe that when you do damage gives an extra point of damage, or you've got specific pieces of armor that prevent damage, that kind of thing. And finally, you've got gambits, and gambits will last for a round. They're up, everybody can see them, and that might prevent an opponent playing a negate damage card, which means that they can't remove the damage you've done. But the flip side of that, it also applies to you too. So any gambits in play apply for both people. So it's a real battle of strategy, trying to work out how am I going to take their their values down while defending my own position by carefully placing your cards, trying to get those opportunities into corners where they can't use many attacks on them, if any. So you're laying these cards a bit like dominoes around the board, but not in a chain. You just move them around the board, trying to score as many points as you can. It was a real battle of strategy, and very quickly you get down towards the bottom end of those scores. But then the game becomes all about not drawing too many attack cards and drawing lots of strategy, so you can see if you can just get that win over your opponent. After 2 plays, we were 1-1. We both really enjoyed it. It was nice to be able to beat Dave for once in a 2-player game. It doesn't happen very often, so I will sing and shout about it. So Salt and Bones is coming out on Kickstarter. If the TTS is anything to go by, this looks like it's going to be a really, really nice game to play. The artwork is stunning. It's got a real good feel to it, and I think when that's actually real product, and it will have a really nice table presence. So go check it out.
Hi, Dave the Grey here, reporting on location for the Hairy Game Lords from, well, my house. And I do enjoy a nice strategy game where you're trying to just outthink your opponent each turn, trying to get inside their brain, figure out what they're going to do, stop them doing it to you, and stab them in the guts with a cutlass. And that is what Salt and Bones is all about, really. So each turn there's a bit of tactics to start with, where just touch my face, where you get 7 cards, but you can take them from 2 decks. One strategy, so it's stuff that's going to affect possibly both of you. For instance, you can't use any defence this turn, so quite a handy one if you're planning on going on the attack. And one that is your attacking cards. So you can mix it up, go for a sort of a bit of both. You can go all-out strategy and try to get those cards that are going to be really defensive if you're down to your last couple of wounds and trying to sort of eke it out to the very end. Or you can just go in all guns blazing, cutlasses swinging, and go all-out attack and hang the consequences. Hanging's possibly not the best word to use where pirates are involved, to be fair. But yeah, so there's a little bit of thinkiness before you actually start the main game. And then once you do, you're taking it in turns to place your cards on your sinking ship that do damage to your opponent. And depending on what cards you're playing, you can give your opponent an opportunity to do more damage to you back next turn. But it's one of those where if I do more damage to him, he's possibly going to get a chance to do more damage to me back. So do I want to be cagey, just do a little bit of damage here and there, and then rely on my strategy cards to give me a bit of extra welly? Or do I just go in swinging and try and take him down before he almost inevitably takes me down? So quite a little bit of tactical thinking as you're playing the game. As each round progresses, the actual area that you're playing in gradually gets smaller and smaller as the ship sinks, which is a really nice touch. And that can create some more strategies, because holes in the ship let you place your cards in slightly better locations to make it harder for your opponent to come back at you. And it can also be really annoying when all of a sudden there's a hole in the ship and you now can't do very much damage to your opponent because all the decent places to go are sort of over there, out of your way, and your opponent has outthought you. So it is quite a nice, thinky little game. On the surface, it's quite easy. I mean, the rules run to, a couple of pages? So it's not a difficult game to get the hang of. And me and Pete were playing it online, obviously. And we got the hang of it after sort of one round. And it was quite straightforward until you start thinking about it. And then it's one of those games that probably the more you think about it, the more tactical options become apparent. And then you start thinking a bit more and thinking a bit more. And you end up actually having quite a tactical little tussle. Especially towards the end game where you're both down to virtually no health. One of the cool little things is if you both die, you end up back at 1 health and play another round. Now, playing a whole round while trying to avoid losing that 1 point of health, while at the end of the day you only need to take 1 point of health off your opponent, makes it really, really edgy and tactical. And you have to start really thinking about how are you going to prevent damage to yourself, because it's quite easy to do 1 point of damage. Oh, you'd think so. So yeah, starts off, you think, there's not a lot to it. Play that, do damage. Hey, everything's nice and easy. But actually, the more you get into it, the more you actually have to think about what you're doing. And you have to try and outsmart your opponent. And that is a sign of a good game, to be honest. It's a piratey game. Everybody likes pirates. You notice that I haven't done the accent just because I like you all, really, and you don't want me to do the accent. There you go. Just once. But anyway, it is, if you like a piratey game and you like a card game and you like tactics, it's probably going to be for you. Nice and straightforward to get into. Makes you think a little bit as you get into it a little bit more. So give it a try, back it, and subscribe.